support. Someone pop up and say, okay, how can I help you with your green card at 6 o'clock at night? So I've heard a lot of students who are on sports teams, they can't do office hours during the day, or they're very impacted because they have practice at 4 and they've put all their classes jammed up. So this is another reason. So with that, I really want to get through a lot of material today. But I want to make sure you don't have any outstanding questions. So I'm going to do that 10 seconds of silence while you think of any questions. Danielle and then Brett.
Okay, for like the 4 different ways you can feel about that.
Yeah.
And is that like the number that you grade it on?
Yeah. So the easy it's cut off. I'm sorry. Blackboard does weird things, but if you got it correct, then whoops, you can't see me point at my screen. If you got it correct, that means you got 3 out of 3. If you got 3 out of 3, I'm not returning your quiz because you haven't. If you didn't get 3 out of 3, then you got an email saying that you didn't get 3 out of 3. You can collect your quiz. This is just score 1 to 2 or 3 to 5. That's the score at the very bottom to ask you how hard it was. Okay? So this is to tell you, most students didn't think it was that hard, but if you're in this category, great. Great because you realize you're shaky, you admitted it to the professor in this very minor, safe way, and now you can do something about it. If you don't want to do something about it, that's up to you. You can get a mediocre grade in this class. It doesn't hurt me, but I wish you would get it. Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Brett, did you have a...
Yeah, is there a quota for the AHA?
That is all on the AHA page. There is no weekly required quota, but it is extra credit. So it's written on there, and if you go to the form, it tells you what the requirements are. Anything else? Great. Okay, so let's jump straight into econ. So we ended last class talking about supply curves. Supply curves are no different than demand curves in the following way. They are price-quantity pairs. They are the answer to the what-if question for sellers. What if this is the price? How much would you sell? Another way to interpret it is this willingness to accept idea, which is actually more fully described as the minimum marginal willingness to accept. So I don't have this written in there. I don't think there's a section where you need to write down willingness steps, but you should know the phrase willingness to accept because it makes it easier to understand the supply curve. So the text there, right here, is for the 17th unit for this seller. This is an individual seller. If the point on the supply curve is $5.17, that means in order to sell the 17th good, they'd be just willing to do it if they were offered $5. If they were offered $4, they'd be a little lower. They wouldn't be willing to supply the 17th unit. If the price were a lot higher, at $6, the seller would gladly sell the 17th unit. So again, this is the break-even point because we need some way to make sense of this question of what if. What if the price was $5? How much would you sell? If someone were to say, well, at $5, would you sell another one? And they say, yeah, I would sell another one. Then they didn't answer the question as we meant it to be. It's the maximum amount of goods that they would be willing to sell. And if I pick a certain quantity and price, that is the price at which that activates that unit. So the 17th unit is activated in a sense for the seller when the price goes up to 5. If the price is $3, the 17th unit is not activated. Brett?
So this has to do with selling the 17th unit, not selling the 17th unit?
Yes, it's the 17th unit. It's the 17th unit. Because I could also ask you, if the price were $10, would you be willing to sell the 17th unit? And you would say, yes, I would be willing to sell the 17th, the 18th, the 19th, the 20th, all the way up to what this number is. Okay. So it's not I'm selling the 17th unit. It's not what I said. The other thing is it's not that the seller is selling the first unit for $1, the second unit for $2, the third unit for $3. This is if they were offered every single unit at $5, how many would they be willing to sell? Yes, they are.
Sell it, surplus, someone willing to buy at a higher price than they're willing to accept.
Yes, so producer surplus, we're jumping a little ahead, but if you've looked in the book or elsewhere, the producer surplus has to do with the minimum willingness to accept minus that the price they get paid minus the minimum that they'd be willing to accept. So it's the upside down lollipops for those of you who remember. But we'll get to that when we do equilibrium. Yeah, Justin?
So when you were explaining that to Brett, the thing with like if you have would you be willing to sell the 17th unit for $10? That thing, how, like what number unit would we not be willing to sell it for $10? Would it be anything above? Is that how it would work?
Yes. So if this were $10, then you would not be willing to sell this unit or any of the other units to the right. Okay. So at $5, you wouldn't be willing to sell the 18th unit.
Right.
And at $4, you wouldn't be willing to sell the 17th unit. Because if I was $4, this would be out of range. So you do all the units starting from the left.
Okay.
Duke, great questions.
Why does the seller want more and more for the same product that they still want?
So think about this as you are, they have to give up more and more. It kind of has to do with opportunity cost, or it could be a mechanical relationship around, suppose you're running a restaurant, the more you sell, you have to hire more people. And in order to get more people, you might have to pay them extra or overtime. That's one way to think about it. The other way is to think about it, the first units of doing it might cost the same amount to produce, but then later amounts might cost even more to produce.
Or less, so.
They could, if they cost less, so they can cost less, but the supply curve, the quick answer to that question is we'll see that when we do production and cost about why the supply curve comes out that way. So Duke is asking actually a very insightful question. Usually, sellers want to offer, it's cheaper to make later units. So the first version of Microsoft Windows costs, I don't know, $1 billion to make, and the second copy takes $0 because they just copy it, right? So in that case, it doesn't go up in price. So for software, it wouldn't go up in price. But if I were to hire you to work for me, Duke, let's say this is mowing my lawn. I have a really big lawn. I don't like mowing it. So if I offered you to mow once, you might accept, I don't know, $40. But if I asked you to mow every single day of the week, you'd be giving up more and more inconvenient times. So you'd start saying, well, I'll do it for 50, I'll do it for 60, I'll do it for 70. For different quantities, you might have a different price you have to activate that unit. This is also not what the seller wants to sell it at. The seller wants to sell it at $1 million. But this is the minimum they'd be willing to accept. Any other questions? Okay. I think you're not working. No, I think you're working. So we had a similar idea of we have the supply curve, changes in quantity supplied versus changes or shifts in supply. And this is taking a point and moving it right to the left. You covered this in your Friday section. Does anyone have any questions of something on here that I'll let you stare at it and think of any questions if you have any. And then we'll go to a concept. This is the moment in your head, if it's shaky, this is, go to the BuzzFeed-like article, look up shaky, look at things. Okay. So we're using the Ceteris Paribus idea. If the price of the good changes, it's a change in the quantity of supply. Another point on the same supply. If something else changes, this is a change in supply. The whole price. So I'm going to give you this concept checklist. Everyone, half of you are going to love it. Half of you are going to say you hate it because it's unfair. You don't know up, left, down, right meaning. Well, that's why I don't grade you on this for homework. I mean, on an exam question, I showed you as concept checks so you can think about it. So explain in words what the supply curve given as a graph means, that's part A. If you're stuck, make a table. This is for goods or the good or service seats on a flight from Ithaca to New York, New Jersey. So I'm just giving you and telling you this is their supply curve. So explain in words how you would think about it. And then part B, if the government puts a $50 per seat tax, what happens to supply? Which direction is the shift? Is it up? Is it left? Is it down or right? There will be some guessing in this because you're like, this is a weird shape, you don't know what it means, but try to think creatively about what it could be and be very nice about helping you to get the right answer. Okay? So concept check. Any questions about what this concept check means before I leave the room and let you talk? Okay, I'm going to leave the room and suddenly you're going to. Thank you.
I think it's saying, since we're talking about
The
supply,
minimum amount that
I
they
think it's saying
they-
that the airline is willing to
the minimum
supply
amount
0 seats
they'd be willing to
at
provide
a ticket price of
for
$150 or
100
less.
tickets.
But, yeah, you can consider that. You did the middle part better than I did.
Yeah, and then at $280, they'd be willing to
Or if they're gonna put 180
like they would
tickets out of the
be
market, they
willing
better be able to get them at
give 180
Yeah.
tickets.
So at zero,
At $150, but past
At zero, they
$150, they would charge upwards of
$150.
like any
Right.
price below
No,
$150,
no.
or like I'm not
Right.
putting anything.
So if the government
Not
puts a
worth it.
$50 per
to make
seat
my
tax,
Okay.
returns on maybe
What
jet fuel
happens?
costs like $80, and that's one or whatever. I don't know.
so the supply would be shifted. Wait, hang on. Don't do it. The government puts $50.
Once it go down,
It would shift left.
I'm hearing lots of
wait,
great
is
discussion.
it puts a?
I was thinking
It
that
would shift this way because like you would no.
Okay.
Hey, tap it. Right.
I'm
No,
gonna,
shift
I'll
this-
pause you for 10
the
seconds
price
and then,
has-
or it's more than 10
No,
seconds.
Because
Actually, it can be 10
$50
seconds if we all do this together. At a price of 50, what is the quantity supplied? Everyone?
0.
At the price of 149, what is the quantity supplied?
0.
Okay, I'm going to skip 150. What is at the price of 151? What is the quantity supplied?
180.
At the price of a million, imagine that goes up all the way. What is the quantity supplied? Okay, great. Keep talking. Or are you ready to answer? Okay, you ready? Okay. Megan has a question and then.
of the
Yeah.
150 is gonna go to somebody. They want more.
Okay.
They would.
At the price of 150, it's not a single point. So this is what drives students
Yeah,
crazy.
they would
Like, I
provide
need a
you-
number. I need to. Well,
So what's the price? That's the raising the price.
at 150, they're just willing to sell the first unit, and they're also just willing to sell the second unit. Just willing is willingness to accept. Just willing to sell the third unit, fourth unit, fifth unit, sixth unit.
So they could potentially sell it to 179 units at the.
And even they'd be willing to sell the 180th one at 150. And then beyond that, it's just bonus. Okay? We also don't say at 180 the willingness to accept is 150, 151, 152. This is just to help interpret for you that it doesn't go any further out. It stops there and it just sort of stops. Yeah, Leah?
So why does the graph spike up and not stop?
It spikes up because it makes it easier to talk about. But if you wanted to be very stringent and say what is the willingness to accept for, if I plotted just willingness to accept, then I would just draw a straight line here and end here and I wouldn't go up. Because the willingness to accept for this unit is 150. However, if I want to know at the price of one $200, what is the quantity that would be supplied, then I kind of need this line. So it's just helping us have something we can talk about. So what I want us to agree on is this says that up to, the most important stuff is up to $149.99, 0 units, at $150, just willing to sell 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, all the way up to 180. And beyond that, you can't get any more units. So I would also accept if you drew it like this and then stop, if you wrote stop there. That might be more. But then if I asked you at the price of 200, what is the quantity supplied? I don't want you to say, well, 200, there's no number here. So that's why you know, if you want to think, this just tells you quantity supplied only, not willingness to accept. If that's helpful for you, write that down. That clarifies something. Okay? Oh wow, lots of hands. Before I get hands, let me ask, how many seats are on the plane? I know I heard a lot of people talk about this. Let's go with the back row. Anyone in the back row? 180. Okay. Who said that? Jane. Okay. So, Jane, you know, if this, can we fly? Does this supply curve allow us to fly another plane in case the price goes up? I mean, get more than 180 seats? No. So this is as if we're stuck at one plane only, and the minimum they'd be willing to accept tickets at is $150. This is saying then, well, so this is one of the tricky parts. If you want to bring in actual operations in, you'll think, well, if they fly the plane empty, they're not going to make any money. Well, that's true. So they may not be willing to fly with like one person on the plane for $150. So there is a kind of, it doesn't quite fit reality in that way. But the way to interpret this so that we just have something to talk about is, imagine they have to fly it. The government said you have to fly it, and somehow the cost to service each customer is $150. That means if they charge $149 and the cost to service the customer is $150, they're going to lose money. So that's one way to explain that the $150 is the minimum willing to accept. They won't accept anything lower. Okay? And I'll take some questions. Gabby, Justin, and then Danielle.
I don't mean to like confuse, but so could you think of the vertical line at 180, sort of like it would almost be a form of consumer surplus, because anything that they charge above that would be excess of what they're willing to accept for it?
So since there are two questions about producer surplus, I'll just add in. Suppose the price is $200, price and quantity. They'd be willing to accept $150 for each of these units. They got this, so the producer surplus is going to be the price paid minus their willingness to accept.
Oh, yeah, producer surplus.
So it's going to be upside down lollipops, and in this case, it's going to be the whole area. If I ask for across all 180 seats, it would be 180 wide times 150 tall, 200 and 150. Producer surplus. But I will show that to you again in a second. Justin, do you have a question?
Yeah, so like, what would this curve look like if, let's say, because a plane has like first class, so let's say they have like 20 seats, but they only would accept like $200 for that, would it just then be another like step?
So if we add first class, it's tempting to want to put that there, but we need for, when we talk about a market, we need for the good to be the same good. So if we have differences in quality or differences in goods, we would actually probably have two demand curves. Two supply curves. One for first class, one for economy.
Okay.
Question? Danielle?
So for the, when you said why would you have 180 of the quantity? Because couldn't any of the quantities also be locked to 200?
Okay. So the what if here is, first I just want to say it's what if 200, so I just picked a random number. And then you said, why does it go up to 180? So this curve asks the question, the supply curve asks the question, what is the most units as a supplier you'd be willing to produce at this price?
Okay.
So at 200, the quantity supplied would be 180. So if they were actually offered $200, they would say, am I interested in making the first unit? Well, the minimum I'd be willing to take is 150. So look at my hand, not my eyes, 150. But I'm being offered 200. Yes, I want to do that. And then they're asked for that second unit, do I want to sell that? And they say yes. And third unit, yes. And so that goes all the way out to, this unit here.
Okay. So if you're offering the $200, I guess, do you not, like if none of the units were bought yet, wouldn't it like go towards the first unit before it gets to the media?
So, I'm not selling the 180th unit. So I don't want you to think the quantity supply is the 180th unit. It's 180 units. So it's just saying the quantity supply is all of those units. Sorry, all of these units.
Okay. But then like the price for each one is only for that one of the.
And we're saying $200 for each unit.
Okay.
180 units where the price is $200 for each unit.
Okay.
So the thing that's tripping you up is one of the things that we're constantly moving back and forth between. In this case, we're thinking about different what-if scenarios. What if 200? What is the quantity supply? What is the number of units that the seller would be willing to sell? We're not thinking sequentially, one after the other. I explained it with a little bit of sequential because the sequential also makes sense as if they were offered as many units as they wanted to sell at 200, they'd say, yes, I want to sell the first unit, yes, I want to sell the second unit, yes, I want to sell the third unit. And then after 180, the 181st unit, they'd say, no, I can't. Sorry, madam, we can't stick you on the plane because we'll get in trouble by the government regulators. Okay, Megan?
But so, all the airlines, they sometimes like double books and people, so how would that work? Would that current technically go on?
That is not considered here because double booking is entirely a thing about risk. You know, someone might show, someone might not show.
Right.
Everything here is deterministic and what-if scenario.
So
Deterministic means there's no probability.
Okay.
People just show up. Well, we actually don't have any buyers here. There's no demand curve here. We'll add the demand curve a little later. Yeah, this is just supply. So this is just the what-if side. What-if sellers. If you can remember, supply is what-if and sellers, that'll clear up a lot of mistakes. There's any more, you can ask a question. I want to get to part B. If the government puts a $50 per seat tax, what happens to supply? Which direction is the shift? Now, this is a harder one, so I'm going to not do the forced march. I'm going to ask for a volunteer. I guess Will?
It goes up.
Okay.
So that they still only have 180 seats, but now they're going to be need willingness to accept the fee $200 at all times.
Okay. You said that really, did you hear that? That was pretty confident. So that means he must have a reason for thinking that. I'm going to help you. What is the willingness to accept before of the 12th unit, let's say?
Is that 150?
Yeah, 150 before. Now, if the airline has to pay a tax to the government, they're just willing to sell at 150. Are they now? Would they be willing to sell it at 150 anymore? No. So Will said 200. Okay, so that seems about right. After they have to pay the 150, they get back to the willingness to accept of the stuff that goes into their pocket. So the new curve is that. So this is one situation where we have to use our thinking and analysis to say it's not just left or up or right or directions. We actually, in this case, want to think each point, which way does it move? And Will was absolutely correct. All these points at 180, none of them shift to the right. No extra capacity. So the correct answer is up. Up would be the only correct answer I would accept here, because if you said it shifted left, then I would think that it goes this way, but the 150 doesn't change. Is up unambiguous to you, or would you freak out on an exam? Up. Yes. Nicholas, right? Yes. Okay. No name tag. Bring your name tag. Take it out or make one or bring it next time. Okay? So this really hits home this idea of willingness to accept, sellers, a lot of what ifs, and a shift. When something has changed in regulation, the supply curve shifts. Arun?
If the $50 tax is on the consumer, then it wouldn't affect that.
If the $50 tax is on the consumer, then it wouldn't affect the seller, it would affect the consumer, and it would shift the consumer's willingness to pay down $50. If you didn't get that, we'll do an example soon, so I don't want to dwell on that. But the key thing is, this thing has to affect the what if for the seller. So the price quantity pairs, when the seller is just willing to sell that item or that quantity of the item, it doesn't represent what the sellers are charging or would like to charge. So they might be charging $200, $300, but the minimum they'd be willing to accept may be $150. That's the thing that we want to know for economics. So as we move forward, see some diligent writing. Countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slide 46. Okay. So next we get to the market where supply meets demand. I really encourage you to read the textbook on this. If you're not able, if you don't fully understand it in class, I think about half of you will get it fully from class, or you've seen this in micro before. You're not the ones I'm explaining this to as much. I'm trying to explain this to the people where this is new. So the best way to think about the market for me is, again, what ifs. But it's a very specific what if situation. We want to think of it as a game. We have players who are sellers and buyers. Sellers can choose prices, buyers can make offers. What would end up happening? That's one way to think about this. So if you use that, taking this idea of there are people and we're thinking about all these different what ifs, then the idea gels a lot better. So as you can imagine, the sellers are the supply curve at different prices. The buyers are the demand curve. And then we have to put them together and see how they intersect. So I often like to think of this as an auction with simultaneous buyers and sellers. So key terms in this is equilibrium. Equilibrium is a point on the price quantity axis. It's a single price and a single quantity. We call the equilibrium price the price, and equilibrium quantity the quantity. And it is exactly at that center dot where supply and demand intersect. This is very special because at that price, the quantity demanded that we read off the demand curve exactly equals the quantity supplied. There's no extra people who want it. There's no extra people who want to sell it. At that price, it exactly matches. Just as a term, disequilibrium just means at any other price, we're at disequilibrium. There are two types of disequilibrium. There's a surplus where we have excess supply. Some people like to write down P is greater than P star. I just like to remember supply is to the right of demand at some price. I'll say that again. Surplus or excess supply means supply is the one that's further to the right. Or quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded. That is a surplus where there's excess supply. So the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded. Okay? A shortage is where there's excess demand. I don't like to memorize things. I have too many things in my head, and Google helps. I need to just understand it. So the thing to understand is excess demand means demand is greater than supply at that price, or the quantities of demand and supply are greater at that price. So I find a point, I draw my supply and my demand, and I found a point, and this point would be a point where the quantity at this price, this point would be where the quantity demanded is higher than the quantity supplied. So that's a shortage. That's like Krispy Kreme on a free donut day. Okay? Too many buyers. Arnold's book did a great job of this. So if you look at Arnold, you can look at those pages. In OpenStax, you can actually just Google or search in the page the section on equilibrium. So getting to equilibrium. Equilibrium isn't a magic thing we tell you in econ that everyone has to follow, and everyone gets their econ playbook, and they say, oh, I'll follow the rules. So to bring this alive more, I'm going to show you how we get to equilibrium. Suppose that the figure to the right represents the market. What would happen if the sellers tried to charge $3? So where is $3 on here? $5 there. $3 would be a little lower. Okay? So I